What's up, guys? Today we're going to go over all the chemicals I use in my how-to tanning videos. I get a lot of the same questions in the comment section, so I thought I would address it here in a video I can refer people to. We'll go bath by bath. We'll show you what I'm using, ratios I'm using them at, why I'm using them, how they work, and where you can get them. I'll put links in the description below for Canada and the US. I'm going to manually enter in chapters, so if it gets a little wordy at points, you can skip ahead and go to the next section, or you can reference back quickly without scrolling through the video. So let's get into it. The first step of the process is our rehydration cleaning bath. At this stage, your hide is going to be in one of three states. Either it's going to be green-skinned, maybe previously frozen, now is thawed, a salt-dried hide, or an air-dried hide. On our green-skinned, untreated hide, you don't need to salt it before the process. I cover that in another video of why that's not needed. But at minimum, we need to wash out all the blood, dirt, debris out of our hide. If you leave that stuff in, it's going to monkey with your pickle. For this bath, we're looking at roughly 10 gallons of cold water. We're using 2 cupfuls of white, fine, non-iodized salt. I just use coffee cups, or you can scoop it up with your hand. Doesn't need to be exact. There's a couple of reasons why you want non-iodized salt. And the first one is iodine can tint the leather. The second is the iodine can monkey with the pH of your pickle. And the third thing is there's anti-caking agents added to the iodine so it doesn't clump in the bag. And those can hinder the acid from doing its job, pickling the hide. So avoid it at all costs. The next thing we're going to add is 4 liters of white vinegar as a bactericide. It's just going to control the bacteria and help stop hair slippage from happening. And the last thing we're going to add is Kemal 4, about 1 ounce is all you need. And that's just going to help break down the blood, dirt, debris, cleans the hair out really nice. Don't use Dawn dish soap. It's not going to work. It can monkey with your pH. Stick to taxidermy products. Kemal 4 is the only soap you should be using in any of these processes. This is a quick cleaning bath, couple minutes, rinse it out with lots of clean cold water, and then into your pickle. For our salt-dried hide, we're doing the same bath with the same ingredients. The only thing, instead of it being a quick soak, we need to let this hide fully get rehydrated. If your hide is really dirty and bloody, after an hour, you might want to drain out your bath, refill it, restock it with all the supplies, just so you don't have to worry about any bacteria starting hair slippage on your hide. You don't want to ruin it at this point, because this is the point where it's going to get ruined at. It should only take 2 or 3 hours to do this. The one benefit of salt drying over air drying is the salt that's remaining in the air dried hide wants to absorb water, so they rehydrate really well. So like I said, a couple hours. Once it's fully rehydrated, we're into our pickle. For our air dried hide, think game coming from Africa or stuff from a trapper. They don't use salt in the trapping industry when they're preserving their hides. This is the hardest hide to rehydrate because it doesn't have that salt left inside the fibers of the leather that are going to want to absorb the water. It's actually going to want to repel the water. So if we put that hide into our standard rehydration bath, it could take 3, 4, 5 days for that hide to fully rehydrate. It can be a nightmare because you're going to start dealing with problems with bacteria. You're going to want to switch out your bath every 2 to 3 hours on the first day, and then maybe twice a day after that until it's fully rehydrated. It takes a long time. There is one product we can add, and it's called Enzol B. As far as I know, it's the only chemical out there that speeds up the hydration of these air-dried hides, going from days down to hours. So if that's what you're dealing with, spend the money, buy Enzol B. I can't remember what the ratio is. If I can find it, I'll put it up here on what you add it. But it literally takes it down to hours instead of days on rehydrating this hide. Same thing, rinse it out once it's hydrated, and then we're into our pickle. So we're moving on to the pickling process. Our pickling bath is the meat and potatoes of tanning. Without pickling your hide, you're not making proper leather. The basic ratio we're looking here for is for every gallon of clean cold water, we're adding 1 pound of non-iodized salt. I explained earlier in the video why non-iodized. We're doing half a fluid ounce of our safety pickle. We're using a splash of Kemal 4. I roughly use 1 ounce of Kemal 4 for every 7 gallons of pickle, and a splash of a Deodorizer wash, and that's like a half an ounce per 7 gallons. 7 gallons is the most common pickle size I use. So what's actually happening to your hide inside the pickle? The first thing is your acid is going to swell the fibers of the hide. And it doesn't matter which acid you use, safety pickle, safety acid, no harm pickle. I've tried them all. They all work the same. All their ratios are the same as well. Half a fluid ounce per gallon. I think they end up with a great product at the end of the day. TruBond is the one I'm using right now. I think it's the strongest. The one I would avoid is citric acid. I haven't had very good luck with citric acid, and I don't think the end product is as good as one of your safety pickles. So it's swelling the fibers apart in your hide and allowing that acid to dissolve away the non-tannable proteins and collagen out of the fibers of the hide, which will be later replaced with your tanning oil. The salt in that high concentration of 1 pound per gallon is the happy medium place that it allows the structures of the leather to swell enough for everything to be dissolved out of them, but not so far that it falls apart and weakens the structure of the fiber, where if you didn't have any salt at all, it would eventually just turn into mush and you'd have nothing left. The inverse is true, is if you go too heavy with your salt, the fibers don't swell enough and it doesn't remove all those non-tannable proteins out. So that salt ratio is probably the most important part of your pickle. The Kemal 4 in there is not really acting as a soap. Yes, it's doing a little bit of cleaning and degreasing, but its main thing is to break the surface tension of the water so that pickle can penetrate every nook and cranny and get in there and get all those non-tannable proteins out. And of course, our deodorizing wash is there to take away smells. Not really needed for deer, elk, moose, that type of stuff, but I usually throw it in there anyways. As far as adding a second hide to a pickle, don't do it. Stick with what you have working. So I would say a minimum for a normal deer shoulder mount would be a 3-gallon pickle. I don't like that personally. I would say that's a minimum from what I've read. I would go with 5, but if that's what you have, don't add another hide to it. That pickle is full of suspended non-tannable proteins now, and the acid is going to get overwhelmed if you add a new fresh hide in there. Your pH is going to take off on you. You're going to end up with a whole bunch of bacteria and hair slippage. So if you've got a 5-gallon pickle and you got 1 deer hide in it, don't go add another one 3 days later or a week later. Make a fresh batch. You're not going to have problems. The chemicals are cheap enough as it is, so don't overwhelm your pickle with too much hide. That's where you're going to run into problems. Once our stuff is in the pickle, shaved, fleshed, whatever, some are going to need a degreasing stage. So we'll get into our degreasing bath here. Our next bath is going to be a degreasing bath. Think predators. You need to get rid of that fatty, oily layer that they have on their skin. The pickle is not going to be strong enough to dissolve away all of that fat from it. So that's why we need a separate degreasing stage for it. Right now, my favorite is TruBond's Lipa Solv 77. It's 1 ounce of the degreaser per gallon, a half a pound of salt per gallon at 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 3 to 4 hours, mixing it around every hour, half hour, gives you a very good result in your degreasing. My favorite, there's a bunch of other ones I've tried. In my coyote tanning video, I mentioned white gas. I don't like that one at all. First, white gas is expensive here in Canada, and you're dealing with the fumes and the flammability. I'm also doing most of my tanning in the wintertime, so it's not really conducive to be outside with white gas out in the snow. Our hide is fully pickled now. It's been degreased if it needed to be degreased. We're ready to move on to the final stages here. So our next bath is our neutralizing bath. We need to bring the pH of the hide up closer to neutral. The tanning oil does not like to be absorbed in a high pH environment. So we need to get that full thickness of the leather fiber structure up higher into that 4.5, 5 range. So we're going to use a ratio of, for every gallon of cold water, we use a 1/4 pound of salt and 2 ounces of baking soda. And we're going to only mix half of our baking soda in at the beginning, give it a half an hour, add the second amount, and that just stops a surface neutralization. If you shock the hide, the fibers shrink too fast and it doesn't allow the neutralizing water to penetrate that full thickness. We need that full thickness to be neutralized, because you also could end up with is a surface tan. And that's where, if the full thickness isn't neutralized and still has acid in it, the tanning oil doesn't like to stick to the area that has acid. So only a thin layer will actually be tanned. The rest will still have acid, which could cause you problems down the road with future acid swelling. And that's probably the biggest reason people end up with stiff hides that aren't stretchy, is because they haven't neutralized properly. So when you're watching my videos on how to tan, follow the instructions on this. It's very important to end up with a properly tanned, stretchy, flexible hide. So that's that bath, and then we're going to move on to our final tanning process. We're at the final stage and the last chemicals we use in the tanning process, and that is our tanning oils. There's 2 different ways to apply your tanning oils to your hides. First off, one is a submersible and the second is a paint on tan. At the end of the day, the end result is going to be the same. The biggest determining factor is going to be volume. If you're doing high volume tanning, definitely do a submersible tan. It makes things a lot faster. It doesn't make sense to pull out 10 deer hides, lay them on the ground, and paint on tan. Too labor intensive to do it that way. The one thing you are going to have to do as an extra step for a submersible tan is your dry tans, back skins. You're going to have to add an extra tanning oil as it dries to get that soft, flexible hide. That's where the paint on tans have a little bit of an advantage for a back skin, is those tanning oils are already in the tan, so you don't have to add anything extra to it. My favorite right now is TruBond's 1000B. It produces the softest, flexible, stretchy hides out there for a dry tan. I've used a whole bunch of products, and that is by far the best. For paint on tans on wet tanning, I'm using TruBond's 1000. Produces a really good product. Yes, Mackenzie's paint on wet tan works. Pro Ones works. Right now, I'm just a really big fan of TruBond's products. They seem to produce the best end results out there. Anyways, that's it in a nutshell of the chemicals. As I said earlier, I'll put links in description below for Canada and the US of where you can buy these same chemicals and get everything from. Anyways, thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you on the next one.